May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Richard?
Sponsor, Chairman of the Committee on Justice and Blue Ribbon, Senator Richard Gordon
Thank you,
of
Mr. President.
Zambales is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the President and the Majority Floor Leader, who's under the direction of the Minority Floor Leader, Mr. President, I would like to, I really shudder to make a presentation here on good conduct because we have a colleague here who appears not to be. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, Public Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Blue Ribbon Committee, and the Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes now sponsor for the consideration of this Chamber Committee Report number 42. The following resolutions relating to the proposed measures were referred to these committees, and these are PS Resolution number 106, introduced by Senator Franklin M. Drilon, entitled Resolution Directing the Committee on Justice and Human Rights to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the reported eligibility of Antonio Sanchez for an early release from prison with the end in view of ensuring the proper implementation of and enacting remedial legislation to the Republic Act number 10592. PS Resolution number 107, introduced by the Senate President himself, Vicente C. Soto III, entitled Resolution Directing the Senate Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Constitutional Amendments, Revision of Codes and Laws, and other appropriate committees to review, in aid of legislation, the implementation of Republic Act number 10592 on Good Conduct Time Allowance, or GCTA, with the end in view of amending the same in order to ensure that those prisoners who truly deserve the law's benefit shall be granted of the same. PS Resolution 108, introduced by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay, entitled Resolution Directing the Appropriate Senate Committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the implementation of Republic Act 10592, particularly the computation of the good conduct allowances of persons deprived of liberty in light of the impending release of 11,000 inmates due to the revision of the computation of GCTA and its retroactive application. PS number 123, introduced by Senator Ronald De La Rosa, Mr. President, entitled Resolution Urging the Department of Justice and Department of Interior and Local Government to review, amend, and modify the issued implementing rules and regulations of Republic Act number 10592 to reflect the legislative intent of the Congress with the end in view of upholding the impartial delivery of justice. The privileged speech on the good conduct time allowance of yours truly, Senator Richard Gordon, delivered on August 27, 2019, and motu proprio by the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, invocation by the Blue Ribbon Committee, Chairman of Rule 10, Section 13 of the Senate Rules, that the Blue Ribbon Committee may undertake an investigation on any matter of public interest on its own initiative or motu proprio. TSN dated September 2, 2019, page 3. Now, Mr. President, before I continue, I would like just to say, state a caveat. This will be our second partial report, Mr. President, regarding the good conduct time allowance. Now, Mr. President, even at an early age, most of us, if not all of us, have been exposed to what life in prison is. Either through the movies or through stories. We may not have been confined in prisons ourselves. We may not even know someone who had experienced incarceration, but literature and our films have depicted to us the repugnant conditions and horror of prison life. One cannot forget Edmond Dante, Count of Monte Cristo, and his captivity at Chateau d'If, and how dreadful the conditions were at that prison. There is also the portrayal of horrific conditions in hot and humid Ile de Diable that we read in Papillon, Henri Charrier. Their prisoners were subject to torture, disease, malnutrition, and the debasement of humanity. Hindi tayo kailangan pang lumayo, Mr. President. Napanood natin ang pelikulang On the Job, kung saan pinapakita ang mga preso na ginagamit sa pagpatay ng mga taong labas. Hindi sila mapagsuspetsahan dahil nga naman sila ay mga detenido. I don't have to see that movie, Mr. President. My family has been a victim of that. Prisoners were allowed to escape on all the attempts against my father. On 3 occasions, they were allowed to escape. Fortunately, they were captured. Unfortunately, in our country, there is no closure. The masterminds have not been captured. But what is important to note is that imprisonment is horror, fear, and terror rolled many times over. This is not to say those who are inside do not deserve to be there. They must pay for their crimes. But those who get to be inside, given their vulnerability, are prime candidates or subjects for extortion, exploitation, intimidation, and deprivation, Mr. President. That is a given. The new Bilibid prison became a place, such a place, Mr. President. Excuse me. Of vulnerability. The new Bilibid prison has become such a place of vulnerability, Mr. President. And for that matter, even our detention centers. They have become places upon which prisoners are exploited, intimidated, even their families are exploited and even harassed sexually by the guards or by people in authority in the prisons. Persons deprived of liberty, while they deserve to be in prison because of their crimes, do not mean that they should be exploited and be taken advantage of. Their vulnerable situation makes them prone to the many extortions and the many pressures and intimidations done inside the Bilibid. You can take a look at the slide and you can see the squalid conditions in our prison. When our PDIs walk into the Bilibid, they face a lot of temptations, not just exploitation. As we have uncovered during our hearings, we saw that there have been several activities being done inside the Bilibid. These are nefarious activities, to say the least. There is a sale of the good conduct time allowance. Entrepreneurial, yung mga ibang papatakbo ng preso. Ibinebenta yung good conduct time allowance. At kung di ka susunod, wala kang good conduct time allowance. May blackmail ka. There's a sale of hospital confinement passes. Pagka gusto mo ma-hospital para makapunta ka lang doon, kailangan meron kang passes. Babayad ka. Kung gusto mo lumabas, depende kung gaano ka kalaking tao, makakabayad ka as much as millions of pesos para tumagal ka sa labas on the guise that you are sick and that the prison cannot take care of you. Kubols are still prevalent. I mean, just recently there was another raid and again cell phones were confiscated along with other contrabands. And there are contrabands, cash, cell phones, drugs found in the new Bilibid prison. Tilapia is staple food by the poor. Here, tilapia is prostitution in the NPP. Pag pumasok ka dyan, pwede kang dalahan ng tilapia. Ibig sabihin, pag nagbayad ka, there is course prostitution being undertaken by those who are influential in prison. Even catering, alleged favoring of caterers in the Bucor, where the budget assigned to feed the prisoners are excessively reduced so that people can make some more money on that. How can our PDLs be reformed if they are subject to these temptations, extortions, intimidations, and exploitations? Under the Mandela rules, even the persons deprived of liberty deserve to be respected. You're all aware of Nelson Mandela, who was in prison for more than 30 years in South Africa. And because of his freedom, he was able to come out with some form of prison reform. Rule 2, Paragraph 1 of the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners or the Nelson Mandela Rule provides, the present rules, and I quote, shall be applied impartiality. There shall be no discrimination on the grounds of race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or any other status. The religious beliefs and moral precepts of prisoners shall be respected. Mr. President, there must be a model system of penology, and there must be a consistent effort to try and create that model. There should be, for example, full digitalization of the carpetas, which should be accessible to the public or the families of the concerned parties. More often, the carpetas are hidden, and are used as threats to make sure that sometimes they stay more than the time allocated, or they follow what they do not want to do, but because of the carpeta, they could be punished severely. That's why we require transparency, especially with regard to the computation of time allowances and release of prisoners. Full digitalization of all prisoner records is a must. The public must have access to the possible release dates of the PDLs. In addition, the records of Bucor and BJMP employees and personnel should also be digitalized for easy monitoring and filing, and also to make sure that we are getting the right mix of security personnel among the employees of those institutions. The new Bilibid Hospital should be maintained, given a right budget, and be well equipped with adequate medical services so that it doesn't become an opportunity for money made by the powerful in the Bilibid. The DOJ must conduct a thorough investigation of the confinement at the new Bilibid Hospital and other hospitals of drug convicts and high-profile inmates. The DOJ must institute guidelines to ensure that only those with actual sickness and diseases are confined in hospitals. Proper monitoring should be undertaken. If it's digitalized, it can easily be monitored. There should be and like I said, a strict monitoring of those PDLs confined in the hospital will ensure that they are not using their confinement as a medium for their illegal business transactions. There should be an operations center which can monitor every prisoner. The moment that the PDL is released, the Department of Justice must be informed immediately. The use of artificial intelligence, digital and video analytics with command center independent from each other inside our prison facilities is a must. This would ensure that the PDLs, guards, employees are constantly monitored. Funds should be provided as suggested by the other senators. There should also be a code of conduct that is strictly followed. Now, the results of the Senate investigation are as follows, Mr. President. Because of our hearings, the DOJ and the DLE issued a revised IRR on September 16, 2019. This clarified that those convicted of heinous crimes cannot avail of the good conduct time allowance. 2, it resulted in the rearrest of heinous crimes convicts. On September 4, 2019, the President, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, ordered heinous crimes convicts to surrender to authorities within 15 days. That's swift action, Mr. President. Bucor Director General Faildon was fired by President Duterte for the second time, first as customs, and he was moved here, and he did not take opportunity of the second chance given to him. Also, at the same date, on September 4, 2019, President Duterte announced that he demanded the immediate resignation of Nicanor Faildon. The Ninja Cups, investigation on the Ninja Cups, which already submitted a partial separate report, Mr. President, because it went all the way outside, because of its connectivities inside. The Bucor Alas is manned by rotten apples and corrupt officials. Not all, but mostly. It is rotten to the core and from top to bottom. Excuse me. If we are to improve its functions, if we are to have the Bureau regain the trust of our people, no less than a massive change in personnel and in character is required. Mere lancing of the boil will not be sufficient. Putrefaction in that agency is so far so advanced. Only a total replacement of the whole bureaucracy will allow us to see a new, honest, sincere, serious, and effective agency. Now, with respect to the acts of Nicanor Faildon, he admitted that he did not know the existence of Department Order Number 953. He did not follow the requirements under DO 953, such as prior approval of the Secretary of Justice before the releasing of national prisoners sentenced to life imprisonment, reclusion perpetua, or high-risk inmates. Furnishing the Secretary of Justice, he failed with a list of inmates due to be released at least 1 month before their expected date of release. Issuing a certificate as to the correctness and accuracy of the computation of the credits granted and expiration of sentence of the prisoners affected. As it is, Mr. President, we're all aware that the Sandigan Bayan has already ordered the filing of cases, for that matter, the dismissal of some of the officials involved in the computation of sentences. He only verbally recalled the memorandum order of release of former Mayor Sanchez. Yet it seems clear that there was a prior agreement between Faildon and the family of Mayor Sanchez. As seen in various news reports, the family of former Mayor Sanchez were confident that former Mayor Sanchez would be entitled to the GCTA and would be able to walk free. The family knew that he was prisoner number 187. They already had plans to bring Mayor Sanchez to eat at his favorite Japanese restaurant in Makati. They had plans to visit an eye clinic for his cataract problem. In an Inquirer video, one of his sons, Alan, mentioned to Faildon that, and I quote, "Sir, nag-usap po tayo. Nangako kayo. According to GCTA, isa siya sa qualified." Close quotes. His other son, Anthony, mentioned that they were already being congratulated for the impending release of their father, not to mention the fact that the wife of Colonel Faildon, or Captain Faildon, was able to go in and out of prison, especially when they found out that something was amiss. They could go out at night and visit Mr. Faildon, and the following morning also was entertained again. Now, therefore, we recommend the filing of cases against the following people, Mr. President. Nicanor Faildon for nonfeasance, did not allow the procedures requirements of DO number 953 to be implemented. Ramoncito Chito Roque, already given some form of punishment with the Ombudsman. Good for him. Chief of the Documents and Record Section of Bucor. Maria Benilda Mabel Bansil, Corrections Senior Inspector, Bureau of Corrections. And Veronica Boday Buno, no relation to Bono, Correction Officer, Bureau of Corrections. Malfeasance, accepting money for the promise of early release of prisoners. Dr. Ernesto Tamayo, Director, Directorate for Health Services, New Bilibid Prison Hospital. Dr. Ursico Dicenas, Medical Officer, New Bilibid Prison Hospital. And Ms. Meryl Benitez, Nursing Attendant, New Bilibid Prisoners, New Bilibid Prison Hospital. Malfeasance, accepting money in order for the PDLs to be confined in the New Bilibid Prison Hospital, and also allowing certain personalities to go to a private hospital for an extended period of time upon payment of the right price, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, at this point, I just want to point out that there have been continuous deaths and killings of Bureau of Corrections officers employed since 2011. In fact, 12 of them have been killed, Mr. President. There have been recent killings, and they have been done through riding in tandem. And before I end, Mr. President, we acknowledge the invaluable contribution of Senate President Soto, who brought Mr. Godfrey Gamboa and Ms. Yolanda Camilon, whose testimony allowed us to give us a clearer and truthful picture of the horrors inside. Now, Mr. President, this is the partial report, as I mentioned, and I would like to ask that the Senate approve this partial report, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I'm ready to accept any questions.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, just to clarify for the record that since they're still continuing with the investigation, therefore it's a motion to adopt the second partial report, Mr. President. That is the proper motion. So I move to adopt the second partial report of the said committee. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the second partial committee report is hereby adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues.